Well, hello, hello, hello. And I want to welcome you all to the Arizona History Happy Hour. My name is Marshall Shore, and I'll be your host. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the fun that we're going to have tonight because we've got an action-packed show just for you all. Oops. So I've been doing this show for about a month and a half. We've been talking about a wide variety of things and really started as a way with all the COVID-19 stuff going on. I was really missing getting out, chatting with folks, sharing history, hearing your stories as well. And so this really gives that opportunity to do that. So we do a wide variety of things, and that's going to do that. All right. So welcome. And I also would love to say, I want to say that this is made possible by sponsors just like you guys, as well as AARP Arizona. The coronavirus continues to affect us all. We may be apart, but we are not alone. AARP is here in Arizona providing information that can help you and your family. If you'd like information about some of their resources, you can go to www.aarp.org/AZ for Arizona. So I want to welcome you. So today is June 11th, and we've been doing this show for quite a while, and we have a variety of fun segments. I mean, later on, we'll hear from Marcus from the Heard Museum, and we'll be going through some trivia. We also do a segment called Little Arizona, getting a chance to highlight some of those amazing little towns across Arizona. And my green screen today is actually talking about one of the towns we're going to be talking about later on. And you'll notice there's wait a minute, go that way. And you'll notice there is a big Q on the side of a mountain. I wonder what city that could be. Well, you're going to find out in just a little bit. We also talk about Arizona music, as well as then just kind of random things from my collection and kind of the story behind them. So my name is Marshall Shore. I am also known around Arizona as the Hip Historian. Now you might wonder, how does one get a name like the Hip Historian? Well, about 20 years ago, I was working in a library in Brooklyn, and you know what? It was winter, it was cold, and I had had enough of snow and ready for a change. So we load up everything we own into a big orange cube, a U-Haul, and their international world headquarters are right here in the Valley of the Sun. Started back in the 50s for all those folks who were moving here. And so promptly when we got here, moved into a little 1956 ranch. Now, when we bought it, was beige on beige on beige on beige on beige on. There was lots of beige going on. I am happy to say it is a much more simplified color scheme, two-tone of seafoam and cantaloupe. Now, that's what my kitchen looks like today. In fact, our house, I like to call it a little time capsule because we try to keep it to about 64, 65. So that way it really is like walking back in time. Now you'll notice it's like in my kitchen, there's all that amazing buttercream yellow tile with the push buttons inset in the wall. And if you look at my buttercream yellow oven, you'll notice that there is indeed something missing. Some of you already know that it's a window. And so if you're baking something and you want to check on it, you've got to so carefully open that, but even more gingerly shut it, because if you let it slam, if you're baking anything that needs some height, if the door slams, it will not be tall. It will be a very flat loaf of bread or a cake. I've always thought my mom was joking until I made my first cake in that oven, and it sadly fell, and I quickly learned not to do that. Now, as soon as I moved here from New York, all I kept hearing about how there was no history. But I knew that wasn't true, because every time I went somewhere, I came face to face with so many amazing stories. And that's one of the things that really prompted me to kind of do this whole hip historian thing. And then there's that post-war boom that I think in a lot of ways made the Arizona that we know and love. And, you know, all those GIs that either were stationed here, trained here, or passed through on their way to somewhere else, after the war, they were moving here in huge numbers to Arizona, and in some cases looking for a house just like mine. And then there's this man, Dr. Carrier, the inventor of air conditioning. And so without him, we would not be here, especially, I mean, even though this week it's been a little cool, you know, that was a brief respite, and now we're back into our summer temperatures. And so very happy that Dr. Carrier gave us some cool air to enjoy our summers. Also, the Phoenix New Times has named me Best Historian several years in a row, as well as Phoenix Magazine named me the Best Bespectacled Phoenix Celebrity because, you know, I do like my eyewear. Now, this is not necessarily a good venue for this because you can't really see. Well, actually, if I stand up a little bit, you can kind of see, but I always kind of have my own idea of what I think looks good. And so you might remember that every February 14th, we have a big celebration for ourselves. We have 100 years of statehood. And that was back in 2012. And so there were things going on across the state. And right in front of the Capitol on that February 14th of 2012, they decided to do a huge set, a stage. They had all kinds of performers going on, a festival going around the Capitol. And they gave me 15 minutes to talk about anything I wanted to. And I chose to talk about an event that a lot of people don't remember or know much about. It was started back in 1926 by Charlotte Hall. And if you're ever up in Prescott, you can go visit her house, which was also the home of former territorial governors and is now a museum. So you can go tour her house. She was also the first poet laureate for Arizona. The event was called Mask of the Yellow Moon. It ran from 1926 to 1955. The first year it was held at the Elsribo Shriners Temple, which is over just down the street from the Capitol. It later on became the Mining and Mineral Museum. Now, they got kicked out for an event for something that was supposed to happen that didn't. And you know what? In a few years, they're actually going to be moving into this spot once the building gets brought back up to code. So very excited to see this little quirky museum coming right back home where it belongs. Now, it moved over to Montgomery Stadium, which was the first stadium here in Arizona. And it was home to all kinds of things. Besides the Mask of the Yellow Moon, it was also home to the Salad Bowl, our very first bowl game, playing up on that agricultural history of Arizona. Oh, and Jason, thank you for reminding me. So if any of you are on Facebook, if you wouldn't mind, click share so that way other folks can join in on the fun that we're going to be having. Now, what would you expect from the Salad Bowl? Why, none other than the queen of the Salad Bowl riding in her very own float / salad bowl. And if you look close, you'll even see amongst those crowds of folks, you'll see a spoon and fork where she could use that salad bowl to serve. I think there'd be enough salad right there for everybody in that stadium. Sadly, we lost this stadium in the mid-90s. It was over on 7th Street and Roosevelt. Now, the Mask of Yellow Moon, they held tickets at the gate for folks across Arizona to come and see the show. Now, it was touted right up there as Mardi Gras as something that everybody should come and see. And a lot of people did. And because it had, at its height, it had about 5,000 high school and college students performing. And it was woven through the curriculum of Phoenix Union high schools. So everybody got involved. It really was kind of like a Super Bowl halftime spectacular before there even was such a thing. And so this is the debate club. They would do skits. You had multiple marching bands because of all those high schools involved, as well as really large sets. Now, I do have a story from a guy that him and his buddies would go steal a little bit of that set when the show was done, drag it off to his carriage house, and they would put on plays throughout the rest of the year in front of that bit of set. It was also known for these elaborate dance numbers where all the costumes were designed by students from Phoenix Union as well as then made by home ec. And so everybody got involved. And I was lucky enough to find a few dresses in a box. I mean, here we have this amazing Aztec themed dress. And so I was allowed to borrow them for 24 hours and the clock was ticking. And so I was able to convince 3 lovely friends to don those dresses and model them for us. Now, in case you haven't noticed or guessed, I'm not a very good wallflower. So I needed something that would stand up to those gorgeous dresses, which are all from the late 30s. And so the first person I called was my friend Glenn. Now, Glenn rolled in town in the early 50s as a sign designer. And here he is getting a spot on the Wall of Fame for the Arizona Sign Association. They brought in about 10 folks for the first time to recognize some of that signage history across Arizona. If any of you have ever seen the My Floor sign, that's one of his signs that he designed, as well as a slew of others that are still standing across the valley. So the jacket that he painted was an homage to the Arizona state flag. And I think he did a heck of a job. In fact, I took that idea and kind of ran with it. So now I have 7 different suit coats, all done by local artists on a variety of themes. And already talking to some other artists about what the next jacket should be. So that way I can always show up in an event overdressed, but on theme. Now, one of the reasons I always like to talk about this story is because it packs a lot. And it also highlights the fact that some of my best stories actually come from people, because they highlight and talk about things that not all newspapers would have carried or have spent so much time or a different perspective than what the newspapers would have offered. And so I did a program for the Arizona First Families. And when I was done, this woman, Norma, came up and tapped me on the shoulder and said, let's go to my car. I have something to show you. And so we went out, and in her car, she pulled this dress out. This is her mother's dress that she wore in the Mask of the Yellow Moon. Now we know it was either 1928 or 29 because she had the programs with her. But at that point, the librarian in me kicked in, and since I didn't have white gloves, I didn't want to touch those frail pieces of paper and do them any further harm. So I look forward to getting a chance to seeing exactly what year and what dance number, this dress would have been worn for. Now, when you think about the age of this dress, it's in pretty amazing condition. I mean, all those butterflies are still there, and the color is still so vibrant. It hasn't really faded at all. And it is Arizona History Happy Hour. And so, of course, we have a cocktail. And I'm happy to say that our cocktail today is inspired by Frank Lloyd Wright, because he recently had his 158th birthday. I'm sorry, 153rd birthday. All right, so for that, we are having a cocktail called Tall Boxes, which was created by a short-lived bar in Chicago that was over the top Frank Lloyd Wright themed. And so what we need today is, let's see if we can actually bring the bar on. All right, there we go. So what we do need is we need our 2 ounces of brandy. And we're just going to eyeball this because I realized my shot glass I left. So we're just going to kind of fake this a little bit. So that looks to be about 2 ounces. And then, and I'm going to also cheat and just use a little bit of the cherry juice instead of some simple syrup. So we're just going to put a little bit of that in there. And then 1 orange slice, and we're going to take and muddle that up just a little bit. So all those flavors mix up in there and become oh so tasty. And then a few dashes of our bitters. And then we dump in the ice, give it a good stir. And look, I even have a garnish. Woohoo! Look at how beautiful that looks. All right, so here is tall boxes. Oh, dang, that's good. All right. Oh, so I like to bring things out from my collection because, you know, for me, just like the jacket, everything has a story. And today it's this little map here. Well, actually not so little, it's about 2 by 3. And it is of downtown Phoenix in 1947. And somebody went through and painstakingly wrote in all the businesses and went through phone books, and when they could find logos and things like that, they put them on the map. Now, the first time I ever saw this was actually on display at the Carver Cultural Center and Museum in South Phoenix, down on Grant Street, which is the old African-American high school. And so I always thought it was so amazing. And then I had a chance to meet Rudy. Rudy was the gentleman who designed that map. And he would go around town and sell them to local businesses. I actually had him come and we did a signing where he would sign your map. And sadly, earlier this year, he passed away. He was in his early 90s. And so I still do have some of those maps, which are pretty amazing. And I've actually used them for research. As I'm trying to figure out where something is, I'll find a mention that it was across the street from such and such. And boom, I'll go to Rudy's map and there it will be. So again, I want to welcome you all to Arizona History Happy Hour, as well as please don't forget to, if you're on Facebook, you can share this and share the love of Arizona history. And so I also would love to say you can become a sponsor and help this show go on. You can do Venmo right up there on the top of the screen. Every little bit helps, as well as ARP of Arizona is a sponsor. And so the coronavirus continues to affect us all. We may be apart, but we are not alone. ARP is here in Arizona, providing information that can help you and your family. And there is the website, www.arp.org/AZ. Oh, and I should take my bar off the screen because nobody wants to see that. So we'll do that. And now, through the miracle of modern technology, We can now beam folks across the internet, which has become quite a popular thing lately. I know I've been attending, I just last night had a Zoom meeting, as well as now there's some new Google thing out there that was interesting as well to use. And so, let's see. All right, and so we have Marcus from the Heard Museum, who is the director of, and what is your official title, Marcus? Uh-oh, we can't hear you. Let me, for some reason, I have you muted. There we go. All right. So director of community engagement?
Yes.
Perfect.
Community engagement, yes.
All right.
Can't hear me again?
Yep, you are on, you are live. So quick question, with the Heard Museum, is it open?
Yes.
Okay, is it the same hours as what they normally were open before we got into all this virus stuff?
The hours have varied a bit. We're open. I'm getting a lot of feedback. Is there a...
Oh, I don't know. I don't hear any feedback from you.
I'm hearing like multiple conversations. It's really difficult.
If you want to turn down your computer volume.
I got headphones on.
Because I see you're wearing the headset, so I don't know if you're here, if it's picking up.
Yeah, but now I can't hear you.
Oh, okay. Because we don't hear the multiple voices. All right.
Now I can't. Can you hear me now?
Indeed, we can hear you.
Okay, we're good.
All right. Very good. All
Try
right.
to be all technical with the headphones.
Nope.
Okay. Director of Community Engagement. Yes.
Indeed.
We made it.
Indeed, we can hear you.
Okay, we're good.
All right. Very good.
I'll try to be all technical with the headphones.
All right. Now I'm getting lots of feedback.
Okay. Director of Community Engagement. Yes.
Indeed.
We made it.
Indeed, we can hear you.
Okay, we're good.
All right. Very good.
I'll try to be all technical with the headphones.
All right. Now I'm getting lots of feedback.
Okay.
Can anyone else hear that, or is it just me?
Indeed. We made it.
We can hear you.
Okay, we're good.
All right. Very good.
Okay.
Okay, well, I see Susan doesn't hear any feedback, so we are going to go ahead and move on. Oh, Carol Lee does hear it. Oh, and Gloria's saying there's lots of feedback. All right. All right. And now it doesn't look like you have a mic connected at all, Marcus.
But you can hear me.
Up, there we go. Can hear you. Have a mic connected at all, Marcus.
So I'm going to go back and forth so it doesn't pick up your voice on my mic. That's what's happening, I believe.
Okay.
I'll mute and then I'll come in.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to our trivia. So just a little bit about what we do with trivia. So we have 10 questions that Marcus created as a way to just kind of tell some stories. And so what we'll do is we'll go through those 10 questions. They're all multiple choice. So even if you don't know what the answer is, just take a guess and, you might be right. Now you can either write down your answer on a piece of paper. You can throw it here in the chat. And then at the end of those 10 questions, we'll actually do a little bit of music history. And then we'll go through the answers and talk about why those are the answers. All right. So is everybody ready to have some fun? All right. So our first question is, what happened to Dwight and May Bartlett Heard in 1895? Wow, that was a long time ago. A, they got married. B, moved to Arizona. C, opened the Heard Museum. Or D, built an office building. So which one of those things did Dwight and May do in 1895? All right. Question 2. December 26th of 1929 is an important date to the Heard Museum. Why? A, the museum groundbreaking. B, indoor plumbing was installed. C, opened to the public. Or D, archives were opened. Which one of those happened on December 26th of 1929? Question 3. What architect designed an expansion for the Heard Museum and also designed multiple civic buildings around the valley? Was it A, Benny Gonzalez, B, Frank Lloyd Wright, C, Mary Coulter, or D, Blaine Drake? Which one of those architects designed an expansion for the Heard Museum as well as a bunch of other civic buildings around the valley? Question 4. When was the Heard Museum's first room, especially created for collections storage, built? Was it A, 1912, B, 1929, C, 1967, or D, 2000? When was the first room built specifically to hold collections in storage? And we're almost at that halfway mark. So here we have question 5. Which senator donated a large collection of Katsina dolls to the Heard Museum? Was it A, Paul Fannin, B, Barry Goldwater, C, Dennis DeConcini, or D, Ernest McFarland? Which one of those senators donated a large collection of Katsina dolls to the museum? And we're coming into the home stretch. In what year did Oda Men become part of the Arizona Volunteer Infantry? Was it A, 1812, B, 1865, C, 1912, or D, 1941? What year did Oda Men become part of the Arizona Volunteer Infantry? Question 7. When were the American Indian code talkers first used by the U.S. military? Was it A, the Civil War? Was it B, World War I? C, World War II? Or D, the Korean War? Which one of those were the first time that the U.S. military used American Indian code talkers? Question 8. Which famous Arizona soldier was an American Indian and part of the raising of the flag over Mount, how do I say Mount Suribachi?
Suribachi.
Suribachi.
Iwo Jima.
Okay. So was it A, Cochise? Was it B, Sitting Bull? Was it C, Mitchell Red Cloud? Or D, Ira Hayes? Which one of those famous soldiers were part of that flag raising over Mount Suribachi? And we're coming down to the last 2 questions. The sculpture Unconquered 2 at the Hood Museum was created by which famous native artist with roots right here in Arizona? Was it A, Lloyd Kiva-New, B, Alan Hauser, C, Douglas Miles, or D, Steve Yahtzee? Which one of those artists sculpted Unconquered 2, which you can see at the Heard Museum? And our very last question, the Hopi High School won how many consecutive state titles in cross country? Was it A, 7? Was it B, 12? C, 21? Or D, 27? How many consecutive state titles in cross country did the Hopi High School win? All right, well, you're all getting your answers ready. I'm going to go into a little bit of music history. And because of Marcus and we were talking about the Heard Museum, I thought it would be appropriate to talk about one of my favorite record labels right here in Arizona, Canyon Records. Canyon Records actually started back in 1951. Ray and Mary Boley had done a recording of Edley Nate, and they were selling it at the Arizona State Fair. And the guy next to them who was selling jewelry said, well, if you're recording his music, you should record my community's music. And so they did. And from there, they launched what is today the oldest independent record label still operating in not even just the country, but on the planet. I think it's really cool that we have that distinction, because when you think of music, a lot of times you might think New York, LA, maybe even London. But we are the home of Canyon Records. Now, they have several Grammy nominations and several gold records. And you can still purchase. They are still alive and thriving today, and making lots of music for us all to enjoy. And here is Edley Nate listening to one of those albums that they made. All right, so who's ready for some answers? Because as I said, we actually go through, and instead of it being just about showing off what you know, it's actually more about education and a chance for folks to learn stories about Arizona that some of you may have heard before, but some of them I bet are going to be brand new stories that you've not heard before. All right. So Marcus, what happened to Dwight and May Heard back in 1895?
They moved to Arizona.
Indeed, they did move to Arizona. And that map is actually from 1895 of the Arizona Territory. And then question 2. December 26th of 29 was important to the Heard Museum because
That's when it opened to the public, and we just celebrated 90 years.
wow, that's amazing. 90 years. All right. And what architect designed an expansion for the Heard Museum, as well as civic buildings across the valley? A, Benny Gonzalez. So he also designed the Scottsdale Civic Plaza and even libraries. I know I used to work in a library in South Phoenix that was a Benny Gonzalez design. All right. When was the Heard Museum's first room especially created for collections? When was that storage built? It was C, 1967. So when they did that, how did they store things without a special place for them, or did they need to?
Until that time, everything was on exhibit.
Oh, wow. So they didn't have anything, and so there was no rotation of anything. So now, is there a lot of storage now at the Heard Museum? Probably not enough, as most museums go. They always need
Right.
more storage.
Right.
All right. So which Arizona senator donated a large collection of the Kitsina dolls? The Herd to the Herd Museum? It was B. Barry Goldwater. And are those on display? Yeah?
Yes.
There. And I think don't they now have their own special room?
They might have had their special room in the past, but now they're in a large exhibit. It's one of the most frequently asked for displays. Where are the Kachina dolls? I want to throw this in too. Today is May Bartlett Heard's birthday, June 11th.
Wow.
So it's appropriate. I'm on today.
So quick question. Is there a difference? Because I've heard people pronounce Katsina or Kachina. Is there a difference? Is there a preference?
The preference is Katsina, but the sound it's difficult to even write as a Kachina or Katsina, but it sounds more like Katsina.
Okay. So it's us kind of trying to say the word properly. Okay. All right. And what year did the Oda men become part of the Arizona Volunteer Infantry? Why, it was 1865. So was there a lot of Native men joining military things? Is there a history of that?
It's very long history. American Indians have been involved with the armed forces forever, since the Revolutionary War. They fought with the French. They fought on both sides of the Civil War, but the Oda men were helping people come through. They would help protect them.
Okay.
When travelers came through.
All right. And when were the first American Indian code talkers used by the military? B. World War I. And I think these aren't these the first code talkers, the Choctaw?
That's a picture of a baseball team, actually. I know where that picture's at, and I've talked to the Oklahoma History Museum and their curator. I did a Code Talker show years ago, and so I was very familiar with it. It's a baseball team getting ready to be inducted into the Army. Some of them probably went on to be Code Talkers.
Ah, okay. Now, was it just World War I that there were code talkers?
And two.
Oh, and two.
Most everybody knows two, and then there were the Navajo that were Marines, and they had over 400 um, of Navajo, and then all these other groups. There were 20 tribes in World War II involved.
So can you tell us what was a code talker?
They had different levels of code talker. Like the men in World War I, they would only talk in their everyday vernacular. But in World War II, they actually trained Comanche, Navajo, of course, Oneida, and Meskwaki. There may be one I'm missing, but they actually trained them in official code that if that a native speaker wouldn't know what they were actually talking about because it was coded. They trained in Fort Benning. I know the Comanche did. That's like a Signal Corps base, I believe. But it was just prior to World War II breaking out that they called the native men back because they experienced the advantage in World War I. So prior to World War II, they called them back because they knew it was a secret weapon, and nobody has ever broken their codes.
Now, was it based on their community language?
It was based on their language, but they coded it. And
Wow.
they would take
I just assumed it was the language, and I didn't realize it was then even encoding within that.
yeah, and encoded on the. I had an exhibit at the museum, curated in it, and it was there was a little exercise there, and it was a complex system they developed.
Wow. And I didn't realize that it went back as far as World War One. That's really amazing.
Yeah, they actually have the date that it had happened. It was in October, I believe, October the 26th in 1918. Because the
Wow.
commanding officer saw some men talking, they were shy about it, because they were getting in trouble for speaking their native language. But they were speaking and they overheard them and they said, "Hey, is there somebody on the other end that can speak this language?" And they said yes. And that's when they started transmitting in Choctaw. And they also did it in Comanche and a few others in World War One, but just in their everyday vernacular. They were just, but nobody knew that language. um, so it's quite a fascinating story because then the tide of World War One changes in that winter with the code talkers' support. Up until that point, the Germans were intercepting every message, and they even tested it by sending out false messages, and then they'd go and see if the Germans were there, and they were there. So they were listening in on everything until the code talkers in October
Wow.
26, 1918. So they and then they came in World War II and pretty much did another amazing job of unbroken codes, and they were trained soldiers. The gentleman behind me is a Navajo code talker. He's my wife's grandfather, and he told me stories that just amazing, amazing soldiers.
Wow. So were those so are there any books or anything about the
Yeah,
code talkers?
a lot of books on Native involvement in the armed forces. A
Okay.
lot. So yeah, World War One, World War Two. There's several. Mhm.
All right. So, which famous Arizona soldier was an American Indian and part of the raising of the flag over Mount Surbiachi? Ira Hayes, D. So, who was Ira Hayes?
Ira Hayes was a local gentleman, right from down the street, really, at the time, um, out on Gila River, the Sackatone area, I believe.
Okay.
Um, and he helped. His family still lives down there. It's a very proud family. Just the history of American Indian veterans is important to the community. So yeah, it's quite a legacy, right in our backyard.
Well, I know it's like a few years ago when they were really trying to push for Route 66 to become a historic trail. There was a group that actually had an airstream go through and stop at a variety of spots, and they stopped up in Flagstaff at a hotel that was said to be where the Navajo Code Talkers met for the first time in northern Arizona. And so there was a group actually trying to buy that hotel, and the idea was they wanted to turn it into a museum for the Code Talkers. I don't think they ever got a hold of the museum
No.
or of that library. All right. The sculpture Unconquered 2 at the Heard Museum was created by which famous native artist with roots right here in Arizona?
That's
B.
Alan Hauser.
So who was Alan Hauser?
Oh, wow. Alan Hauser was an artist that was born into freedom, they say. He was the firstborn of the Chiricahua Apache after 27 years of captivity, prisoners of war. And they let him out, and he was born right after they let him out. He became an artist, the one of the best known artists, native artists worldwide. He taught at the um, American Institute of Art, IAIA, Institute of American Indian Art, early on. But his first monumental sculpture was of a veteran theme, and his last sculpture there in 1994 is of a veteran theme. This is kind of an interesting history that I learned doing this.
Oh, wow. So this was the last sculpture that he created.
Yes, 1994. He passed on in that year. He intended to. I talked to the gentleman. It was his studio helper at the time, assistant. He was doing most of the work, the heavy work for sure. Alan was designing, and they were going to do multiples, but they only did two.
Okay.
Then, yeah.
Well, and that's one of the things I really like about the Herd is it's not one of those museums stuck in time. They actually do have contemporary native arts as well.
We're really focused on that, wanting to, work with artists and communicate, what's going on, how they feel.
All right. And our very last question. Hopi High School won how many consecutive state titles across in cross country?
That was 27.
Wow. So almost 3 decades of winning the state title.
It's a national record.
Wow. So no other team has beat this. So I'm assuming it still stands.
No other team's ever done that. And it's interesting that the team that beat them was from Flagstaff. Because they come down here and race.
So I wonder if it has something to do with like the altitude.
No, they lost a couple years ago. They lost one after 27.
Okay.
They didn't get 28. That would have been a bummer to be on that team. But
I can only
I'm sure the coach Baker, Mr. Baker from Hopi High is amazing motivator. So those men, I know they did their best. They didn't get 28, but
well, and that's all any of us can do, especially right now, is just do your best.
Yeah, absolutely.
So can you tell us about your role as director of community engagement? What does that mean?
I work in the community, mostly doing cultural art workshops.
Oh,
wow.
wow.
Native communities. We work with native artists. They help select the students. We work with native students, and we also do these classes for just the general public. We have a creative aging program where we have 55 plus. Anybody can come. It's free too. Right now, we're just finishing up a class, but I do mostly cultural art workshops. I work on the programs for veterans. I travel around to and do presentations on and just in trying to build allies for the museum.
So have those workshops been impacted by the COVID virus?
Yeah, absolutely. We're online though. We're distance learning, and we all have something to say about it. But it's what we have for now, and we're hoping to maybe move into a hybrid model in the fall where we can keep this space. The Herd has opened right now, and we're open from 10 till 4 every day. I think Friday we're open late, so tomorrow we're open till 8 p.m. And we're keeping some safety measures in place. So you'll have, if you check us out at herd.org, you'll see some of the measures. Masks are required,
nice.
and distancing, and there's only 100 people allowed in the museum at any given time. So we're just trying to be responsible by opening, but giving people a place to like connect and get out, because we have been in quarantine for nearly 3 months now, or I forget how long it's been, Marshall. But I just started going back into the office, and it's nice to get back and just be in the galleries. If I get a break, I want to stretch my legs, I can go walking through the galleries and see the artwork. That's always I've been there 22 years.
Wow.
And that's one of the most beautiful things.
Well, and I know it's like going, I mean, with all that's going on right now, I've got a lot of friends who are artists as well. And I mean, they're having these creative blocks. So I'm so glad to see that you guys have moved to a virtual method
Mhm.
as a way to kind of help people get through that.
We certainly have. And then we built a herd at home.
Oh, what is heard at home?
It's a little extra information and videos on our herd.org. If you go to herd.org, you'll find herd at home.
So are those basically like tours of the museum you can do from your house?
No, they're videos that actually I produced with some native filmmakers on the classes that we do. So you can see
Uh,
agave sandal making or pottery making, basket making, and the students that are involved with it. And you can kind of hear how it impacts them. You know, when you can hear, they talk directly to that issue.
well, I
It's
know
really
when
cool.
we're chatting earlier this week, and we were talking about the saguaro fruit wine. I just had a friend who posted that she had been out collecting some of that saguaro fruit.
Mm.
So I don't
Yeah,
know what it's going to do with it, but it was
that fruit's pretty versatile.
so. And she was saying it smelled like strawberries.
Yeah, yeah. You can make a jam out of it for sure.
Does it taste like strawberries? I've never had it. I mean,
What does it taste like? Kind of like a grape, I guess.
oh,
Yeah, it
interesting.
has. Yeah, it has that. Maybe that's a strawberry grape mix, a lychee. I don't know. It's a complex. It's a one of a kind fruit, and that only grows here in Arizona and northern Mexico. So,
Right.
but it's been sustaining people for thousands of years. They have ceremonies around it. It's deep.
So they have entire ceremonies based on the sorrow
Yeah.
fruit.
Yes, sir.
Oh, and then my friend Gloria talks about her grandmother used to make jam out of
Yeah.
the sorrow fruit.
Yeah. Yeah. I took it and dried it. You can almost somebody made like a fruit roll ups with it.
Oh, wow. That would be
Yeah.
really good.
hmm
So, what are the upcoming exhibits that are coming to the herd?
We got a larger than memory, which is going to be an exciting exhibit on young native artists from 2000 forward. So it's a really
Wow.
look
Oh my gosh.
into
That's probably amazing.
happenings, the current happenings. And they're very technical artists, and we'll do a lot of conversations around the contemporary art.
Nice. So when does that start?
That starts late August, I believe.
Oh, so that's coming up right around the corner.
Yes. I think it's going to be up through the fall. It's going to be an amazing show. Something for the presses. I tell you, it's going to be beautiful.
No, I mean, no, and that's one of the things I appreciate about the herd is not just focusing on the traditional arts, but also those up and coming artists and even new mediums.
Yeah. Video, of course, like we're doing, but the contemporary arts are always there. It's our signature exhibit. It's called Home. So it's very important to us as well. That collection is a legacy for the whole state and for everybody here, um, to really tell the history of thousands of years of people occupying and just being a part of this land. Being thankful that they could be here. It was an amazing relationship between the, you know, it's different.
I mean, but that's one of the things I really, being in New York, you got a little bit of that connection between the American Indian history and kind of the mass populace, but it's much more pronounced here in Arizona, I think, than it was back in New York.
Yeah, the Maricopa County has the largest population of American Indians of any county in the United States, larger than LA County, which is second.
Wow.
So, and the state has the third most natives. You know, and Hopi were also code talkers. So a lot of people know about Hopi, but they didn't know Hopi had code talkers in World War II.
Ah.
And so there were a lot of groups. I mean, they've all proud warrior traditions, and other things. You know, Indian voting rights really got its start here from the Yavapai, Native American voting rights. So that was a really important step, and it happened here in Arizona.
Wow. So we were number one in that.
No, we weren't number one in that,
Oh.
but I guess the story is how it just came about. It happened at Fort McDowell with those men insisting that they vote. You know, they had the right to vote. They were citizens. 1920. It was 1924. They passed the Indian Citizenship Act. Up until that time, it was very confusing as to if they were citizens or not. Some of them were. In fact, during the Civil War, Grant's secretary was a native. He was Seneca, and right now his name escapes me. But he went on to be the secretary of the Treasury, and he actually signed money, you know, before the Indian Citizenship Act. So I can't remember his name off the top of my head. So many names and information going through right now.
Oh, of course. I know that feeling.
So I forget where I was going with that.
So what is the website for the Heard Museum again?
It's HEARD, herd.org.
Ah, so very good. So easy to find.
Easy.
And you can find those videos of the contemporary art things going on, as well as the how do you actually go visit the museum.
You can get there by driving. We got plenty of free parking. Got the light rail.
I'm going to say because light rail is right there.
Light rail, we got a Heard Museum stop. It's
indeed. So it's easy to find on light rail.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and joining us and sharing some of your stories about just the Heard Museum and kind of their influence and things they're doing in the communities as from the early days till now.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity just to get on and talk about the Heard Museum on May Bartlett Heard's birthday.
Yeah, no, I mean, which is great. I mean, we should have made a little birthday cake for her.
Oh, that would be awesome.
So so another quick question is I've also heard that was the Heard Museum ever their house?
No. It was built specifically for the museum. Their house was on the corner where the Pink Tower is, right there.
Okay, so they live where that building is.
Yeah, I think it was called Casablanca. It was a huge house. Interesting.
Okay, because it was I've heard that, but it never really came with any facts. So I was like, you know,
no, it's not. It wasn't.
But
everybody's heard that as absolutely. They always ask.
Very good. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your night.
Thank you. We'll see you later.
Have a good night. Wow. You know, that's one of the things I love about this is I get to learn things that I had no clue about, which is always fascinating. And I look forward to going on and seeing some of the art workshops that they've been doing. Would be really cool. All right, so now we have Little Arizona, a chance to talk about a little town. And so why do we do this? Well, Arizona has the 5th largest city in the country. But for me, being from a small town of like 25 people, it really is in some ways those small towns that I think really create kind of a synergy and energy and keep so many stories alive and are so quirky amongst themselves. And so today we're going to talk about quartzite. So quartzite, has anyone ever stopped there for gas? Because, you know, if you're on your way to LA, it's right off on the 10, and it's usually the last stop before you get to California, and the cheapest gas that you can get right then and there before you cross the state line. Now, one of the things I love about quartzite is they have a lot of history, which they're now kind of getting in tune to. I mean, here with even this little marquee they have set up for quartzite, you have camels. Exactly, Blair. You know where we're going. Hi, jolly. So they've also recently redone the cemetery, or actually how you get to the cemetery. And so basically, hi, jolly, back in the mid-1800s, there was they started doing a team of camels going through the desert, kind of across the northern swipe. But nobody knew how to deal with camels because they weren't like horses. I mean, they weren't cute little animals that ate carrots out of your hand. I mean, they were really kind of nasty smelling, snarling beasts that spit. And so they actually brought handlers over from the Middle East. And so that's Haji Ali was his name. And when the camels were disbanded because of the Civil War, he actually wound up in Tucson, had a business hauling things around with those camels, but that was a little bit too boring for him. So he decided to move to quartzite and become a prospector. And that's where he wound up passing away. And so they erected this pyramid on his gravesite, with the very top of it being a camel, to really play up on that history. Now, quartzite was not always called quartzite. In fact, it was also called, originally it was called Tyson Wells. And here is the monument for that. So in 1864, someone dug a well named Tyson, and from there it became kind of a watering hole for folks going by. It later became a stagecoach station and just kept growing from there. In fact, it actually was an active mining from the 1860s to about in the 50s is kind of when that started going down. And it's actually called the rock capital of the world. So it's a great place to go, and you can still hunt rocks, but there's also a small town there. Now, even though the population is just under 4,000 folks, because of where it is, it sees about 2 million visitors a year. So there's a lot of traffic that goes through there. And you can stop and visit Joanne's Gum Museum, which is a collection of gum wrappers from around the world, all on display for you to go wander through and take a look at. As well as it is famous for the flea market. That high season is really once those temperatures drop down, you can go and find oh so much stuff. I mean, if I have chance, I stop and take a look because you never know what you're going to find. In fact, let's see. Let's lower the camera a little bit. So the bolo that I have on right now, I picked up in quartzite. A lovely little piece of turquoise. And so you never know. I mean, I've gotten everything from padlocks to cufflinks. And that's kind of the fun, is you have no idea what you're going to find, but it's always a fun adventure in quartzite. And it's an easy stop on your way or to or from LA, or maybe you're going to go to Blythe and Courtesy Coffee Shop, but guaranteed a good time. So remember, if you have stories, questions, maybe you've got some pictures you'd like to share or comments, you can reach out to me, and I will show you in just a moment how you can reach out and say, hey, you know, I've got a great story for you. I also work with the Arizona LGBT+ History Project, and we work with ASU, U of A and Phoenix Pride to document and preserve that LGBT history right here in Arizona. And right now we have Pride Month. So a lot of people, talk about New York Stonewall, but we have our own LGBT history right here that is truly unique to Arizona. I'm also part of the Arizona Vintage Sign Coalition as we help create kind of a master list of vintage signage and where it lives across the state, as well as keep tabs on kind of the rebirthing of neon and how it's becoming such a huge, Arizona's becoming such a huge destination for that. So if you'd like to reach out, you can reach out. My email is hello@hiphistorian.com. Or you can also follow me on Facebook, which is Marshall Shore Hip Historian. And also, don't forget our Venmo. And so next week, I'm so excited. We have, and I think is Blair still on? So, when I started doing this, Blair kept popping up and saying, hey, let's take a chance. And so Junior League is going to be our guest next week, talking about so many preservation projects that they have been involved with and kind of even their history and how they really help support so much across the valley, from health to preservation and so much. So Blair, so excited to have you guys on next week talking about Junior League. And then on the 25th, I am happy to announce that we have Pussy LaHoot, who is a senior, I wouldn't say senior, a seasoned veteran performer, a drag queen who's been around for quite some time here in Phoenix. So Pussy LaHoot is going to be our guest for Pride. So that should be a fun show as well. So I will see you all right back here where you're watching, whether it is on my Facebook, someone else's Facebook, maybe you're viewing this on AARP's Facebook, as well as YouTube and Twitch. So there's various ways that you can watch this show. And, and just as parting, this show only happens because of you being an audience member and also supporting it to make sure that this show can continue. Now, AARP of Arizona has stepped up to be a sponsor, and the coronavirus continues to affect us all. We may be apart, but we're not alone. AARP is here in Arizona providing information that can help you and your family. And you've got the website right there, aarp.org/Arizona. So that way you can find information that they have to help you in this moment. So thank you all so much. I will go ahead and leave that up as we go ahead and say good night. Again, thank you all so much for being here on whatever platform you're enjoying us on. And I look forward to seeing you all here next week as we get a chance to learn about Junior League, which is going to be really exciting. And Nikki, I just sent you my PayPal information earlier today. In fact, it may have been just before I went online for this. So again, thank you all so much for being here. And I will see you the same bat time, same bat channel. Until next week, stay healthy and be safe.